Hi, my name is Jackson Phillips. I'm an account manager here at Matrix Design Group. Talking about the history of Matrix really gives you a framework for understanding why we're in the market with OmniPro that we're in today. At the highest level, Matrix Design Group is a wholly owned subsidiary of Alliance Resource Partners. That stock symbol is ARLP, if that's something that you're interested in looking into. In that 2006 to 2008 timeframe, Matrix was purchased by Alliance Resource Partners in order to support underground mining operations. And, prior to 2013, when the product that I'm going to talk about became available, we started testing and rolling out our champion product, IntelliZone, which is more or less the same application for pedestrian detection, but in the underground mining world. That is a magnetic tag-based system, which works great underground because you can truly control who's going in and out of your mining environment throughout the day, and you can get a perfect idea of who's down there and who's not. You fast forward to 2013, technology of the like is mandated in underground U.S. mines, and that's something that we have 95% market share in. And then, after IntelliZone, when we kind of reached what we considered our peak with that, we started to look into other markets and where technology like IntelliZone has its place. You move above ground into the warehousing, machine guarding, and construction environments and world. You see that there was a true need for something like OmniPro. So whenever we came above ground, we looked at what IntelliZone is and what we want our new product to be. First and foremost, we needed to be able to get rid of that tag that IntelliZone lies on. We needed to be able to be a little more cost effective for above ground markets. And then also we needed to be able to alert on people with a high level of confidence in all different environments based on configurations that we lay out. So what we were able to do with those criteria is we looked at LiDAR, we looked at radar, and we looked at ultra wideband. And then at the end of the day, we landed on OmniPro and the AI platform, because what that was going to allow us to do was us build our own model that we have the say over, that we can train, teach, and customize for all of these different environments and applications that we want to take it to. And, we went through our version 1 camera, and now we're on our version 2 camera. But really, the market was there for us in the beginning. We just had to figure out the best way to tackle it and to deliver something that customers were looking for. It's not something that's attributed to any one complex factor, but it's more a multitude of variables that, as safety professionals, you have to recognize. You can start with automation is more prevalent than ever. And with these streamlined production practices, we're seeing more infrastructure and equipment needed to facilitate new standards, but that's coming with no true plans to increase facility size. So this leads to tighter facilities, which is going to reduce designated paths of travel to keep pedestrians and operators in specific zones. And then on top of that, in 2021 and 2022, the warehousing industry reached a peak in terms of new hires. And then also with that, there were a record number of job openings. And then to that same sense, in adjacent environments like construction, we saw turnover rates just absolutely skyrocket. So whenever you combine shrinking facilities, automation-driven production urgency, and then inexperienced or overworked employees, the result that you're going to get is actually an environment tailored to produce hazardous forklift activity. And then aside from what technology is kind of doing to address that, a step taken to combat or recognize these environments and the issues that surround them was done by OSHA, and that's through their National Emphasis Program, or NEP for short. And this is a program that targets industrial trucks, material handling, and then really putting an emphasis on struck by hazard specifically. And what this program allows for is unprogrammed inspections to take place. And in 2024, what we saw from that program was fines in industrial environments that totaled $8 million. And in just specifically manufacturing environments, there were 937 citations in that year. The best way to look at it is an extra set of eyes for your operator at the end of the day, that's going to come with real-time alerting and prevention. You no longer have to specifically rely on standard procedures and facility foot traffic mapping, to rest assured that you're reducing your vehicles or facilities vehicle safety. What you can do now is implement a system designed for activity anytime your lifts are powered and on. And what that means is reactive approaches take a back seat to real-time prevention. We like to say that our alerting capabilities allow us to appeal to three of the operator's senses, being see, hear, and feel. And so as alert priority increases in the vehicle's direction of travel, we can cue visual indicator lights, audible alarms, and then throttle reduction, offering present awareness while still capturing meaningful data for those reactive measures to still take place on the back end. Yeah, so we don't really want to look at AI technology or OmniPro specifically as if it's developed or built to replace current safety measures, but we're going to reinforce them. Some of those traditional forklift safety measures, they tend to be reactive, not predictive. So things like operator training, your painted floor lines, mirrors, horns, and any kind of audible really that you're going to see inside of a facility structure. Those all rely really heavily on human behavior and perfect attention taking place. And the problem with that is what we're running into is even your well-trained operators, they're susceptible to being fatigued, distracted, or rushed, especially with the developing automation world. And then inside that same breath, pedestrians often are assuming that operators can see them when that's not always the case. Those traditional tools, they're not able to adapt to these newer real world conditions. So they can't really account for blind corners, stacked product, your changing traffic patterns, or congested areas. And so what I'm trying to say is once they're installed, they don't change based on changing risk. And that's where a technology like OmniPro kind of steps in to help bridge that gap. And what it's going to be able to do is add a predictive layer of protection. It actively detects pedestrians and objects in real time, even when visibility is poor or sight lines are blocked. Instead of waiting for someone to react or abide by a rule, the system's capable of intervening by those alerts that I alluded to in a previous question, whether that's audible, visual, or when configured, reducing throttle power before a near miss becomes a true incident. And then, just as importantly, OmniPro provides data and visibility in the case that these near misses or incidents take place. So it's capable of showing safety teams where interactions are happening, where risk is the highest, and how behaviors are improving over time. And that's something that our traditional safety measures just aren't capable of and can't track. So like I said, instead of replacing training or procedures, OmniPro reinforces them. So we're turning forklift safety from a rule-based system into a more dynamic or data-driven one that works consistently even when people can't. It's really two main reasons. In real-world forklift operations, simplicity and reliability, they matter just as much as safety to leadership. Tag-based systems, they sound great on paper, but in practice, they introduce a lot of friction with your workforce. Tags get forgotten, damaged, shared between people when they're not supposed to, or at the end of the day, sometimes just ignored. Contractors and visitors often don't have them at all, which means the system's really only going to work for people who abide by it. So a tag-free system like OmniPro removes that dependency altogether. It detects pedestrians automatically without asking people to change what they wear or how they're going about their working day. So that means every person is protected all the time, not just the ones who remembered a badge. And in that same kind of sentiment, configurability is just as important. No two facilities are going to operate the same way. A narrow aisle warehouse has different risks than what a paper mill or a steel plant might have. And then a lot different than all of those would be a food distribution center. And fixed rule systems aren't really going to be able to account for that. So what AI or OmniPro is able to do is be tuned by zone, speed, sensitivity, and response behavior down the road once you've had it for a while. So it actually aligns with how the site actually runs, not how a generic system assumes it should. So what you're going to find is the result's going to be higher adoption, fewer workarounds, and then better long-term performance. Operators trust it because it behaves consistently. Your safety teams are going to value it because it's flexible. And then leadership supports it at the end of the day because it scales without adding any kind of complexity from facility to facility. So in short or summary, a tag-free, highly configurable system, it's important because it fits technology to the real world rather than making the real world fit to adapting technology. Yeah, and this is kind of the golden question. When organizations evaluate ROI for AI-based collision avoidance like OmniPro, the most meaningful metrics are the ones that show risk reduction before an incident ever even takes place. On the safety side, strongest indicators of that are going to be pedestrian exposure events. So close proximity interactions and then system interventions. So these metrics are going to help show how often people in forklifts are coming too close and whether the technology is actively reducing that risk over time. A declining trend there tells you the system isn't just alerting, it's also changing behavior. And then another important metric there is consistency of protection. We alluded to the fact that OmniPro is tag free, meaning every pedestrian is detected, including those visitors and contractors. So measuring coverage consistency across shifts and departments helps kind of validate that safety isn't dependent on compliance or human memory. And then from a business standpoint of things, ROI is really going to show up in your operational efficiency. Fewer high risk interactions mean fewer incident investigations, fewer work stoppages, and less management time spent responding to safety events. And that's got a direct impact on productivity and then bandwidth for what your leadership has to do for other things throughout the day. And then, finally, organizations should look at scalability and adoption as metrics. A system that operators accept, that doesn't slow down workflows and that can be deployed across multiple sites without any kind of customization overhead, except just trying to critique it so that it applies from one environment to the next. That's going to deliver ROI over time. So whenever you're looking at it, the true return isn't just about preventing single incidents. It's about measurably lowering your human risk. And then at that same time, you're improving your operational stability and giving organizations visibility to risk that they've never had with your traditional safety measures. Yeah, so risk is no longer something that's reviewed after the fact. It becomes something that's measured, trended, and actively reduced on every day. So safety teams gain leading indicators instead of lagging ones. And then your leadership can make decisions based on data rather than assumptions. And then as these systems become more connected and data driven, trust in the data becomes critical. And that's where ISO 27001 fits into the future. What ISO is going to be able to do is provide a framework for managing your information security So what that means is, how is data collected, stored, accessed, and protected? And for AI-powered safety systems, this matters because organizations need confidence that operational data is secure, access is controlled, and that sensitive information is handled responsibly. So in the future, safety technologies like OmniPro, they're not just going to be judged on how well risk is detected. It's also going to be judged on how well it protects data, supports compliance, and then integrates into those already existent enterprise governance frameworks. So AI-powered safety systems and standards like ISO work together. Really, one is reducing physical risk on the floor, the other reduces digital and organizational risk. And then that's all I have for you guys today. I appreciate you taking the time to join us for this recorded interview. If you need to contact us or are looking for any other information, you can simply go to matrixteam.com. Thank you.